Let me tell you a story. What's your story? What brought you into this? Did you have any passions before you came into audio?
So then I went to Cincinnati for school, and I studied recording arts.
I'm like sitting in my childhood bedroom listening to basically a private concert of Dolly Parton.
Sean Astin, we did The Great Gatsby with him.
It seems like a lot of neat stuff is happening at Dreamscape right now.
We had a lot of ideas.
There is something really great about people being able to bring their full selves to the table.
And in a way, that not being quiet makes us all stronger. And I'm glad there's people like that out there.
What goes into deciding what projects to put on the portal?
It's calm, it's peaceful, it's simple, and it's beautiful.
Hey there! Welcome back to the Nomad Narrator. I'm your host, Emily, an award-winning audio producer, director, and narrator. And I created this show, The Nomad Narrator, to celebrate all things audiobook. So whether you're a big fan of audio storytelling, or someone who already works in the industry, or just someone curious to know more, audiobooks have been growing really almost exponentially in popularity over the last decade or so. And as we get more and more people interested in this awesome work that we do, I wanted to make something where everyone gets a little bit of a peek behind the scenes or behind the mic, and to really feel like you get that insider's perspective. So today we've got a new episode type that we're going to add to the show. A lot of you might be familiar with the lineup already. We've got sort of a rotation of 4 different episode styles that air about once every 2 weeks, usually on Wednesdays now. And the first type are our Keystone episodes, which are the real heart of the Nomad Narrator, where I take the mobile recording studio out on the road and I meet up with narrators and authors and do an in-depth interview with them where we spend a whole day together exploring their hometown and their creative philosophies and their personal lives and how all of this shapes their experiences as artists and storytellers. And I love these episodes so much. Right now, they are one of our 4 offerings. So that's the first one, the Keystone episode. The second one is called the Coach's Corner, and this is where we have someone sort of at the height of the audiobook field who coaches other narrators come on the show for an interview and a live coaching session. They send me the piece right beforehand. We do a cold reading of it right on the show, and then they get a chance to take that and show how they would help someone mold it into a great performance using me as their guinea pig. The 4th episode type, I'm skipping over the 3rd one real quick. The 4th episode type is the open mic. This is just an opportunity to create an episode about something interesting or pertinent or timely, and then coming back to this 3rd episode style, which is what we're going to be sharing today. I think judging from the comments that I got back and the download numbers that a lot of you were just as enthralled as I was by our last dialect deep dive with Catherine Luttrell, where she broke down the historical and cultural and geographical and generational, just so many different contexts that come into play in the creation of a dialect that's commonly referred to as British RP. And then she even did a little bit of coaching toward the very beginnings of building this skill of performing British RP. And all of it was just so enlightening. And I could not wait to have her back to do the same with more dialects. But unfortunately for us, though fortunately for her, recently Catherine went back to grad school. And we also live in very different time zones. And try as we might for several months, we just could not find a time that both of us were able to record again. So eventually we decided that having an entire segment for dialect work with Catherine wasn't going to work out. She will be back a little bit later this year for open mic episodes that we're looking forward to. But I'd like to introduce the new episode type that we'll be having instead of the dialect deep dive moving forward. We've got the producer's perspective. So producers are like the hub of a wheel with all these spokes extending outward to different projects, different narrators, different directors. They keep us all moving forward with the publisher as the cycle of each publishing season turns. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to start inviting some producers on the show to talk a little bit about what it is that they do at their individual publisher, how that publisher might be structured, the best way to get in touch with them, and just give us a little bit of insight into some of their favorite projects and some of their favorite things that they're working on. So our first guest on our first ever Producer's Perspective is Erick Black, the director of production for Dreamscape. Erick is a real fan of the audio format of audiobooks and audiobook narrators. He is a laid-back but highly skilled contributor to this profession, and I just always love getting to run into him at things and chat and catch up on stuff. And it was really nice to have this opportunity to talk to him a little bit more in depth about some of the things that are going on at Dreamscape right now. So without any further ado, I present to you Erick Black. You appeared and disappeared.
Oh, I'm clicking too many times. I'm not being patient. There we go.
Hello.
Trying.
Where are you dialing in from
And
today?
yeah, I snuck into one of our studios. Um, Nice and quiet in here.
Yeah, for
So
sure. That's great. How are you today?
it's a nice chair. Quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. How are you doing?
Well, my finger hurts and I lost my glasses and
Oh,
I'm drinking out of a Christmas mug. Do you see how big it is?
oh wow.
Slay all day.
Slay all day.
So
What'd
a
you
few
do to
years
your
ago,
finger?
all right, I had the brilliant idea at like 8:30 last night to put festival lights across the ceiling of my office. And
Okay.
I used these little hooks that you have to like screw into the ceiling. And I was so excited about the project that I didn't really pay attention to the fact that it was destroying the edge of my finger. So it's the worst finger to have something wrong with too, because every time I click my mouse or every time I
Oh,
touch anything, it just hurts. So yeah.
but the office looked amazing, right?
Yeah, it really does. It feels very, I mean, it's like it's so cute, and we don't really have, like, ceiling lights. It's like you have to, like, plug lights into certain outlets, and then the switch will turn those on, and
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
without an overhead light, it's, like, always kind of annoying to try to find the right way to position lamps and things, and when you've got a giant booth in the room, it sort of, like, changes where you can have lights set up for things to work, so I put those up there, and now it just feels like a little carnival in my office, and it's really fun.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
fun.
All right. Well, Eric Black, we have crossed paths a few times, but I really don't know you all that well. So
Oh.
I think that it would be really cool just to hear a little bit about you from the start. What's your story? What brought you into this? Did you have any passions before you came into audio?
Yeah, well, I kind of always knew since high school that I wanted to get into audio. I had some friends that, one played drums, and another guy played bass. So they kind of handed me a guitar, said, learn how to do this so we can be in a band. That led to recording myself on a 4 track, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically like a cassette deck that you can sort of record 4 things onto. Like it was a multi-track of on cassette back in the day. I just loved with when I had that, I just loved kind of creating songs and on it.
So do
And
you
when I was
songwrite?
yeah, I always liked writing songs. It's been a while. Uh,
Where is it that you grew up that you were doing this in high school?
Toledo. So yeah, I'm back here. I
Toledo.
didn't always live here, um but yeah, in Toledo. And then yeah, so then I went to Cincinnati for school, and I studied recording arts there, and I did that University of Cincinnati for a couple of years, and then went to Florida to Full Sail, which is like a very highly specialized 12-month program, and you just learned a bunch. I was very eager to work in a studio. I thought recording bands. I thought I got out and did a internship at a studio, and it was just not fun. I think it was,
Mm.
I realized pretty quickly, like, maybe this is what I want to do, but I managed to kind of work a whole bunch of things still in the field, just not in a studio. And I hopped around for a while, and then one day, this place in Toledo, I knew I was moving back to Toledo, and um, saw a place that was hiring someone to record audiobooks, and that was
So it was
Dreamscape.
just like totally by happenstance that you decided to move into vocal arts.
Yeah, absolutely was. And I wasn't, I listened to audiobooks. It seemed easy enough. I'm like, well, there's only one microphone. It can't be
Yeah.
that difficult. So that part of it seems simple. The part I wasn't sure about is, as an engineer here, we were expected to direct the books, and I didn't really have any experience there.
What year was this when that happened?
2015, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you end up gaining that experience at that time? Like, was there someone at Dreamscape that just sort of like mentored you, or were
yeah.
you sort of just thrown into it on your own and you had to learn by doing?
Yeah, we had the lead engineer at the time was John Hokelbohr, and he was great. Just really took a lot of time, sitting with me in sessions, and I was doing a lot of editing, which was great with our freelance narrators. So I got to know a lot of narrators, the ones
Yeah.
out there in the wild, in their home booths that way.
See, I
Um,
feel like that's how I got to be like trained in a lot of stuff is just by virtue of the fact that as the editor, it was all like some of the best narrators and some of the best directors. And I was just like a fly on the wall for all of these things because I just got the audio and then I would listen to all of it. So it was almost like getting to sit in on all of the sessions and be like an apprentice to these people just by virtue of being the editor. Was that kind of your experience too?
Actually, most of ours, if not all, was punch and roll. But I know exactly what years later we did a Macbeth multicast during the pandemic, and Paul Allen Rubin directed each session pretty much individually,
Oh,
with the
cool.
exception of some scenes with Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. Their dual scenes. I think everybody was on the phone together for those, but yeah, to see, I know exactly what you mean. Like to hear his feedback, and this is again working with Scott Brick was in it, Dion Graham, Simon Vance, that are like some
Yeah.
big names in that, and to hear the feedback he was able to offer them and how they made the adjustments. I really learned a lot from editing that together.
Yeah,
Uh,
I bet. That's always been my favorite kind of editing too, is it's like I think a lot of editors they're, really focused on being able to get through the project quickly and so a punch in is like great, clean up some of the technical stuff. But
yeah.
I love the roll records where I get to hear plus it's been so cool. Now you guys at Dreamscape are having some more like celebrity narrations and you know, memoir author narrated stuff it seems like lately. But that's some of the coolest stuff, in my opinion, to edit because these are people that you don't really have access to, in everyday life. And you get to just hear them having conversations. One of my favorite things that I edited was Dolly Parton, and
Oh, cool.
it was incredible. I mean, like, she had these little uh, things at the beginning of each chapter where she was going, because, she owns all of her own songs. So she was going to include those later on, but just as a placeholder for herself, she just, like, sang all of them. So it's
Oh,
like this random situation of being, like, sitting here just, like, doing my job. I think I was actually living with my parents at that time. I moved back in with them. I'm, like, sitting in my childhood bedroom listening to, like, basically a private concert of Dolly Parton.
oh yeah.
It was just so neat. So, I don't know if you've had any projects like that that sort of have just been like, "Wow, how do I even get to do this? This is so cool."
Yeah, I mean, we've um Sean Astin, we did The Great Gatsby with him, and I did the edit on it. It was very cool hearing his voice, and I mean, I think the Stranger Things season that he was in had been just a year before, and of course, I grew up at the time of Goonies and kind of
Yeah.
all of his great stuff that he did when he was younger. So that was definitely surreal. No one else has heard this. He just sent files over, and I'm the one, cleaning it up, piecing it up, putting together pickup packs. It was
Did you
pretty
ever
cool.
get the feeling with that of like, I can't believe other people don't get to listen to this? Was there anything in it that you were just like, oh, this is so special? Like people would love this and I just have to cut it out. And like it's great that I get to hear it, but
On that particular one, no, just because pretty much everything he sent was in the book. But yeah, we're working on one with Tiffany Haddish right now, and of course, her personality is just huge, and there are so many funny outtakes. I'm not even editing that one, but just listening to a few minutes here and there, and she's hilarious. And I'm
maybe there
hoping we
can
can.
be like a blooper reel at the end.
Yeah, I think we might be thinking about something like that.
Yeah.
She's just a very funny person.
Yeah. So I have noticed that it seems to be, and we kind of talked about this a little when we ran into each other at the Audis, but it seems like a lot of neat stuff is happening at Dreamscape right now. New stuff, new structure. There's the new portal. Well, I guess the portal's not that new, but it feels like there's a lot of changes going on. Do you want to share any exciting things that are coming our way?
Oh, geez, what's coming up? I don't even know, right? Yeah, it's been
You moved into a new position.
yeah, I mean, the work is very, very similar, to be honest, but, the title is director of production, um,
What does that mean
and
exactly with
then
your all's within your all's structure? I'm always fascinated to know how each of the companies is kind of set up because it feels like there's kind of a similar structure across publishers, but also like not. And the titles can be very different and can mean different things. So when you say that you're director of production, what all do you organize, and then what is sort of left to other people?
Yeah, so I still do produce and cast. I'm trying to do a little bit less just to kind of focus on other things. And like you said, what can we do next? I'm not a, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm like, let's break this and try to do it better.
You're
Um,
one of those people that wants to, like, take it apart to see how it works and then put it back together?
Absolutely. Dreamscape really has grown, especially in production. Like when I started, it was basically one person doing all the casting. We had the two in-house studios. It was a pretty small team. I can't remember exactly how many people, but I want to say 15 maybe. And that was again 9 years ago. And then as we grew and got more titles, I started casting. For a while when I was casting, I was like running sessions during the day, frantically trying to edit and then casting. And when we got the studios fully manned and I moved out of that role altogether, I basically moved into a production manager, which oversaw the studios, onboarding freelancers. We also have a video department, which is it's pretty small part of the business, but it's a very cool part. We take children's books, cut the art out of them, digitally, do some pretty basic animation, and then basically it's sort of like a video book we call them sometimes too, where there's
Yeah.
just a video component to kid stories. And
So is this one of the things that you had teamed up with Richard on? Was it something that you all were, like, already doing and then you talked with him and did something together? Or, like, was anything he was doing part of an inspiration to start that? Or, like, how did all that kinda come together?
it's funny, I actually the way that I met Richard at Imagination, I think we were talking about doing some graphic novels and how to adapt that for audio. So I just at some point had been introduced to Richard and really love what they're doing. And I was like, I got to keep my eyes open for a project like that we could do. The iconographics made a lot of sense because I don't know if that's exclusively what they did, but certainly a passion of his.
Is that what
Um,
that's called, where you cut it apart and use, like, pieces of it to animate itself?
yeah. And then we got a book on Judith Human, who was, yeah, just a big advocate. And I think, Emily, you might know more than this, but I believe, if I recall, she championed the Americans with Disability Act.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, seemed like a great title. We got Ali Stoker, who is a Broadway, mentioning musicals,
Yes.
but is a Broadway actress.
Yes, and an NYU alum.
Yeah, so I was like, this is the one. This is the one. And we reached out to them. It was a great experience. They're great at what they do over there. And yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's the one that you said you all ended up releasing, like, 2 different versions of it?
Yeah, which was kind of a challenge in some places. People were like, "Well, people will be confused if we have two versions." And we're like, "No, it pretty clearly says that this one has audio description in it." And that's what it was just funny that, you know, feeling the struggle. I shouldn't even compare it, of course, to, what the book was about, making things accessible, and here we were kind of feeling the same pain to a degree.
Yeah.
Um,
You're right that, like, you can't compare, but at the same time, all that stuff is cumulative. Like, all of these different things that add up give the tiniest glimpse into how nonsensical it can feel trying to navigate the world with a disability. That, like, stuff
yeah,
should just be able to
right.
work. And for whatever reason, it doesn't.
Yeah,
And there just always seem to be new barriers that shouldn't even exist and that don't need to. And yet, here we are. So it's interesting to hear you reflect that even just in the experience of publishing the audio of it. I think that a lot of times people in charge of production who don't need that would kind of think, oh, but it's like extra and people might find it distracting or something. But really, I find that with the audio description that are on all of TV shows and movies and things that we watch now, even when my nephews came over, they're little. I think we were watching Home Alone together over Christmas,
oh,
and the voice came on to describe something that happened. He was like, "What is that voice?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that's for Uncle Chris. Since he can't see it, there's a thing that describes it." And he was just like, "Oh, okay." Like it didn't bother anyone. It wasn't, Sometimes if it's not
Yeah.
balanced, it can be a little bit intrusive. But other than that, I find that it actually adds to things. And sometimes I even understand stuff from the audio description that I wouldn't have caught on my own just from the content itself. So I can find it even more helpful. I don't know if that's something that you feel might be the case in projects moving forward.
Yeah, from, an example from my own life, I watch most everything with closed captions on
Yeah.
for kind of that same reason as sometimes I don't hear, it'll be like heavy breathing. I'm like, I didn't hear the heavy breathing. There's heavy breathing
Yeah.
in the room,
Now I know I'm supposed
So
to
I
feel
think it is
tense.
right. Yeah. And that happens a lot where there's just something I missed, like what you said. It sort of helps how it would be received, though. I don't know. I don't know if people would like that or be bothered by it. Like you said,
I think it's especially cool with the children's books that it seems like the earlier that an audience gets used to something, it is no longer, something different for them when they grow up, which is neat in its own right. But I think like when I did the APA panel and Richard and Annie were reading segments from different children's books with the audio description, it was practically magical. I mean, I just felt like I was transported into a picture book. And I didn't even know how they managed to do that with such, it's not like really intricate, detailed description of things. It's just some of the most pertinent information. But I think that's almost even better because it really allows you to like make the picture in your head. I don't know. I thought it was amazing. It made me want to go and listen to more children's audiobooks, quite frankly.
yeah. And we've had a challenge too, because the videos, the iconographic videos, we typically will release an audiobook version too, and never really knew how to deal with those moments where you don't know what's going on. Sometimes, a sound effect will help. But that was one of the things too, talking to Richard, he said that totally made sense. Like when you are first learning, when you are young and you're exposed to books, um, at least with my kids, we would be reading a book and then stop and talk about the pictures and
Yeah,
what's happening in them. And that was a huge part of it. And to not have that, I mean, really, if you if you can't see the pictures, you'd never have that without stuff like this.
yeah.
And absolutely, everyone should have that.
And it's amazing what the access is like now, even compared to when we were growing up. Because I know that my husband, when he was a kid, one of the reasons that he loves reading so much today is because of the availability of audiobooks. Even before most people had it on their smartphones, he had something called a Victor reader.
Mhm.
And there have been other things that, you could download stuff too. And, but when he was a kid, there wasn't like, I think a lot of people don't quite get how cumbersome Braille is, and it's even a contracted alphabet. So there are symbols that mean whole words. It's not just letter
Right.
to letter, but even so, it's just so it just takes up so much space and it's so difficult to transport. The magic of audio is that it's just so available, and that didn't exist. He had to get stuff on little cassette players that were special proprietary equipment from the library, and it's totally different now. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, we did a book called Blind Man's Bluff, and it was a memoir, a guy who kind of slowly lost his sight over time. But he talks about all that, not being able to read anymore and having to go to a special library and getting these big cases full of audiobooks. And that was the only way he could read. So of course, when we were doing the audio version, he was very, very invested,
Yeah,
and the same things. This means so much to me, you won't believe, now that I can just they're on my phone, I don't even
yeah.
have to lug around all the, anything. And yeah.
Okay, let's get back to Dreamscape. Sorry, we've kind of gone off on a tangent here about accessibility stuff, which is great. It's some of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm sure it'll keep coming up. But you recently moved into this head of production role,
Oh yeah.
and talk a little bit more about exactly what that is. You still do casting, you still do producing.
Yeah.
Uh,
So it was kind of like I said, it's not too different from what I was doing. It was just sort of growing into things that needed to be done when our I'm saying new president, but he's been here for, over 2 years now. Sean McManus, he has a
mhm.
long history in publication, audio
You know
publication.
how I found out his name was I got one of those scam texts that was like Sean McManus wants you to get a gift card and send it to the Dreamscape office.
I
And I
wonder.
was like, this is definitely a scam. And I think I ended up finding his email on APA and sending it to him and being like, you might have a problem.
That's funny. Um, but he was very, very much just like, "Hey, look, I'm gonna stay out of the way. You do what you do. Let me know if you need anything." And I think the production team was fantastic at the time. Lots of really smart people. I say at the time, like it's not now, but just at that moment in time, we had a lot of ideas and things we wanted to try, and finally kind of felt like we could do it. And yeah, we just grew and grew, and things like this is when the portal, so that we could find narrators that we work with that maybe for genres or books or titles that we wouldn't normally think of them in. Uh,
Yeah, so explain a little bit more about how your casting portal works because as a narrator looking at it, it feels like there are like a few auditions, but surely that's not everything you're casting at that time. So it seems like if there's something that's posted on there, is that just something that you didn't immediately have someone that felt like the right fit and so you're open is that does that have to do with author relationships and them wanting something or like how do you decide what goes on the casting portal?
the biggest factor is time. We get a lot of things where we just don't have an extra 2 weeks to put it on the casting portal. We just need to kind of cast them and move on.
And so in
Uh,
that case, it would be important for a narrator to have like a lot of good information listed in their bio on the portal. Cause it when I say portal, I kind of was talking at first about the audition page, but really it also includes all of the narrators on your roster that have bios in it, right?
Basically, we have a roster. Which if someone reaches out and says, "Hey, I wanna narrate," regardless of how many books they have, regardless of their experience, knowing that maybe they'll grow or we just don't know what it's like to work with them, we'll get them in, and we have probably a couple thousand narrators with a profile.
Yeah.
Um, that's sort of where that ends, and that is something we dip into often to find people. Once we cast someone in a project and get that out of the way, we have to onboard them into our larger portal, which is the one you're talking about. That's
Okay.
where you can make changes to your bio, your any life changes you can track in there. You can see all your past and previous projects. Uh,
Yes. That's
you
the okay.
can, yeah,
So
and
I
then you
probably didn't know about the first one because I think I was already narrating for you all when you started the
yeah.
other one. So I probably just got put in there.
Yeah, and I tell people, I say, be as open as you're comfortable with, because we are searching for like to really connect. I'll
Here's
care
an
about.
interesting question that I want to ask every producer how they feel about this right now. Because
Mhm.
I have been so on the fence about like okay, I go to the APA oh my gosh, what are they called now? They're not speed dating anymore.
Oh, quick
Quick
pitch.
pitch.
Yeah,
Yes. I go to the quick pitches and I listen to what other narrators are doing and the new ones in particular that are coming in, they seem so confident saying a lot of really personal things about themselves to a room
yeah,
full of professional strangers.
I've noticed
And
that too.
I have such mixed feelings about it because, on the one hand, I think there's something really great about in any professional environment, people being able to bring their full selves to the table. On the other hand, I
Uh,
wonder how it is that we are able to be involved in projects that are meaningful to us without putting the parts of ourselves that hurt most on display all the time.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting. I had a conversation well, actually, it was at a workshop. It was at the Dion Institute. Someone asked a question. It kind of evolved to this, where I did bring that up. Like so many, it feels like so many narrators are very open and I'm sure it's scary still, but they're not afraid to be vulnerable and they can bring that into the books they're reading, which is very cool. And in a way that not being quiet makes us all stronger, or feel stronger, or at least feel not alone, which is really nice. And I'm glad there's people like that out there. But yeah, to some degree, I'm not comfortable being an open book about a lot of the things that happen in my life, right?
Yeah, and as a producer, fortunately, we don't have to on our end of things. And I just wonder, like,
I
I don't
think
know.
some I
Go
think
ahead.
some people will say things like, I'm passionate about this without really saying anything, or I know a lot about this. And, it's not necessarily saying I personally struggled with it. A lot of people tell stories about family members.
I think that you're right, that that's a really good suggestion, that sometimes saying, "I have experience with this," or what you just said, family members or friends or, someone that I'm close to.
I think if you were, yeah, a movie star, right? Your personal life kind of gets shoved out there and are used to it. And this industry has grown so quickly that people, yeah, there's more people interested in narrators. You're almost in that sphere. There is a lot more attention and focus on you guys than perhaps there was, even 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah. Um, okay, so back to a little bit more about being head of production. So
So, in short, the new position, or the new title, it's a lot of what I have been doing. Just looking, kind of helping and supporting the team wherever. We now have a couple of in-house engineers. We
how big
have,
is your team right now? Like
uh,
you said when you started there were like 15. How much has it grown?
yeah, I think we're at 40 now. We did something like 30 titles a month when I started, and now, we're doing 1,000 a year. That's
That's
just
cool.
production. We have a whole division of for distribution. We have a larger acquisitions team. We have a real sales team, marketing, art. Yeah, so I basically just oversee the production, which is our two engineers. We have some kind of background people that deal with video distribution, QC, the guy who heads up all the production, the produced videos, the iconographic and whatnot. And then Ben is a production manager who kind of stepped in to sort of do some of the stuff I was doing before. So basically, if we are making anything or altering anything that comes in, that's the production, portion at Dreamscape.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Now, I'm curious about this from a producer's perspective. When Acquisitions gets a book, how does it work? Do you do a lot of simultaneous releases with titles that are just coming out? And since you're not the print publisher, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it used to be we would get a lot of books from Penguin and Macmillan and, the big five. Audio was such an afterthought, I think, to them. They would hold on to their biggest titles and then sell off the rest to audio only publishers like Dreamscape. As again, audiobooks grew, those titles became less and less. More of it they handle in-house. So yeah, some of our strategies were the public domain space, which we had always done, but there's just a lot of content and looked at smaller publishers, publishers overseas. There's independent is such a huge space. So that's really become a huge focus of ours. So those are a lot of the front list titles that we do are from avenues like that. There is a lot of backlist that has never been done. So yeah, we dip into a fair amount of that as well.
How many titles are coming through you? Is that like all 1,000 are under your production?
Yeah, every title filters through us. I mean, there's some where we can purchase masters. Maybe they were already available in the UK, but yeah, produced titles is about 1,000,
So,
almost
like, when it
100.
when you have a team of 5 or 6 and you're dividing titles up, what is your process of figuring out which producer will take which projects? Like you said, you have some that might be material that just gets repurposed, or there might be some that I guess you might have a celebrity that you're recording original material with, or there might be a book that you need to do simultaneous release, or there might be some that are backlist. Do you try to divide up amongst your producers an even number of those types of projects, or is it sort of dependent on their interests, or do they get a chance to say, "Hey, I really want to work on this one"?
Yeah, so we sit down in a meeting weekly
and look at the titles that have come in, and we just kind of work through it. Try and keep series with the original producer. If it's book 5, why switch to someone else? We
Yeah.
try to keep authors. Some people you start to develop, relationships, or you understand what they want.
Yeah, I wonder about that author relationship thing. How is Dreamscape with, and maybe it's just on a case by case basis, but like for example, I really enjoyed that historical Christian romance that I did for you all last year. And uh when I looked at the author's name, I thought, man, I'd really like to let her know how much I liked her book. If there were a narrator that wanted to do something like that, is that something that they could do on their own, or would you say definitely ask your producer on that project? Or how would you recommend moving forward with that as a narrator?
Yeah, I know in general in the industry it's kind of frowned upon to just reach out to an author. But I know a lot of times I've heard, "Oh, the author found me on, Instagram and now we're friends and email all the time." Okay. Uh so I don't think usually it's a big deal, but I would definitely recommend talking to the producer just because
Yeah.
you never know. I mean, sometimes the author doesn't hold the rights to a book. So they might not be involved in the process whatsoever, and I suppose potentially could be unhappy that they're not part of the
Yes.
process. So
I would see
I
how
mean,
that would not be a pleasant situation to be in. I always feel like as a producer, my job is to kind of be like the go between everybody and to make sure that everyone has a buffer from each other if they want it. Do
yeah,
you feel that way a little bit?
yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, if people, yeah, it is,
Yeah.
um,
So like I can't, if an author wants to reach out directly to a narrator via social media, I can't really do anything about that. If the narrator didn't want them to do that, they'll just have to figure that out on their own and negotiate their own boundaries there. But I do always feel kind of like what you're saying of I don't really want to pass people's emails along unless I don't know. I'll ask an author, "Hey, so and so wanted to get in touch with you. Is that okay?" But
yeah,
I
and
certainly
authors
will never, like,
often,
promise that to anyone because I don't know how people feel about it, and I wanna sorta be the buffer.
yeah, and a lot of times authors are like, hey, if they have any questions, they can, they can
Yeah.
reach out.
Okay,
Mm,
so you've talked a little bit about production and sort of how you guys are set up. We talked a little bit about the narrator portal. So, basically, you're, like, totally open to people reaching out to you for if they want to narrate for Dreamscape, and then you will kind of put them in this starter position where they, will be part of your database. And then
yeah.
once they actually narrate something for you, they go into the portal. Now, on the portal, there are casting calls for
Hmm.
people to actually audition for. And those are the ones that I'm curious. And it sounds like I was right that those are the ones that maybe you have, a little bit more of a challenge finding the right person, or maybe you have more time with it and you want to actually be able to listen to some samples to find exactly the right fit. What goes into deciding what projects to put on the portal for the casting calls?
Right. So yeah, number one, is there enough time? Okay. Number two, sometimes, yeah, if it's a tricky casting, it's good to put it up there, but sometimes it isn't if you know you're really gonna have to go digging. Uh, but often, maybe we'll get surprised or we've had people reach out, hey, I saw you need a Haitian, narrator for this book. I don't know if you know him, but so and so does this. So kind
Do
of
you
get off
ever
top.
reach out for things on social media or LinkedIn? I know sometimes I'll see like John Marshall Media will post, "We're looking for this very specific person," and they'll get a few responses back. Or do you like it if another one of my favorite things to do, because I don't really do a ton of casting, I work mostly with authors, but I always really like it if I have someone that I think is a good fit for something to try and find that producer and put that name in their inbox just so that they have an option.
Oh, yeah, people reach out often like that. Um, my friend is getting started, I think would be great addition. Um, I don't post much to social I don't post any of them to social media. We have a lot of resources that we tap into, not only our own database if we can find it there. We use Ahab, the VGM, which is the Voices of a Global Majority list we got into. Yeah, so there's a lot of places we can go if we need to. And then
Do you know
worst
about the new
case,
database
we
for
get
disabled narrators that PANA recently
I
launched?
don't.
Yeah, PANA
I do
recently
not know.
launched a disabled narrators database. I think it's invisible or visible disabilities.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that might
Yeah.
be a good place
Okay, no,
to search for folks. Yep.
yeah, because we have yeah, just for me, it's just a bunch of bookmarks. But worst case, if it's going to be something really tricky and we just don't know what to do, we can go to also production houses maybe that specialize in things like that. So,
What are some of the production houses that you all use most frequently? I'm always interested to hear the names of things because every once in a while there'll be one that I'm like, I can't believe I never heard of them before.
oh, I'm sure. I mean, one that we use a lot is Dion. They just have
Yeah.
that like vast roster. We work with some UK studios.
Oh, really? Okay. How do you work with UK places? Is it that you are acquiring things from them or are you sending stuff over there? Is it both? How does the UK market work?
So yeah, these actually we've always had a fair amount of British authors that required, British narration. And I think again that's sort of from having that relationship with UK publishers, because that was just a great source of some fantastic books. So these were actually connections that were made before I even started. There's like three over there we use quite a bit. Chatterbox 2020, which used to be audiobook producers, I think was the name of it. And there's another one, Electric Breeze, that we used to work with a lot. But that's great for any of the, like I get it. And I'm like, I don't know exactly what kind of accent this person should have because it just feels like it changes every 10 miles in England. And that's pretty important. Also, if tapping into some Irish and Scottish, Wales, they have talent kind of from all those areas. So it really, you get kind of a lot of bang for the buck by partnering up with them.
When you get British books, are they coming from British authors or are they coming from British authors in America, so American authors? Like, are they coming through American publishers?
Well, a lot of the ones we get are from Bloodhound, which is a UK company. I think, yeah, a lot of them are coming from authors in the UK. And I'm kind of, again, not really my part of the business, so I'm kind of making assumptions here, but I think we're just such a bigger market. It is a very American thing. A lot of books aren't getting made over there. I mean, certainly some are, and being published in the UK, but uh, I don't think from a financial aspect, it's probably a little more risky if you
That
were to
makes
just
sense.
make them. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that when they were talking about audiobook markets in other languages, just like how much that shrinks a customer base. Because I don't
Yeah.
really remember that it's not like there are as many German speakers as English speakers. If you've got all of these books and you're trying to translate them to a language where the customer base is a fraction of what you've got with English, that
Yeah.
really does make the market kind of impossible in some languages.
Yeah. You just have to be doing it for charity at that point.
Yeah. All right, so we don't have that much time left. This always goes by so fast. Okay, so in addition to moving into a new position at Dreamscape, I keep seeing Dreamscape has been getting like kind of bigger and bigger titles of acquiring celebrity memoirs or that kind of thing. I don't feel like that's something that you all had sort of traditionally done, so that's an interesting direction to move in. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. We talked a little bit about the accessibility things and the iconographic video books, and if you have any thoughts on any further production with that in the future, that would be cool to know about. And then I just kind of want to see like what's in the future for Dreamscape. It just seems like you all are really on the move right now.
Yeah. So one of the big goals, I think, for the company was getting our name out there a little bit more. Um, and I think that's been helpful in building partnerships and relationships. We have a whole distribution arm now called Dreamscape Select that is titles that are already produced. Maybe people did them on ACX and want them to be distributed places other than Audible, but don't know how to do that. So we have a team that will find these partnerships with some really good authors. Frida McFadden's in the program for a lot of her old titles, and they're already produced. So we basically bring them in, make sure they're up to spec, and send them out.
And when you
We
distribute those, are like what other kinds of platforms are those going on?
So our parent company distributes media to libraries, so movies, DVDs, audiobooks. They created us to make more audiobooks. So because of that, we have very good relationships with libraries, which I think is one of the scariest or most daunting things to try to. How do I get my book into a library? I don't know.
Yes. How many titles? So if you've got 1,000 titles in production, how many titles a year do you feel like are
It's
potentially moving through that Dreamscape Select?
it's a lot. Um, a comparable number, maybe quite a few, but they're way lighter lift. It's a very kind of turnkey system they put in place, makes it really easy on everybody
And is
to
that also under you as head of production, or is there someone else to reach out to about Dreamscape Select?
we handle like the QC process of it. But mostly that's in another department. So we're just going through checking the titles, making sure they're not going to get kicked back. A lot of them are very old, so even though maybe they were on Audible at one point, they might not be up to spec to get them other places or even back on Audible, who has probably the tightest requirements.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's been a huge contributor to kind of getting our name out there, getting authors talking. We try to do, the best production we can, really focusing on the books. Like I said, just that being authentic, and authors really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Knowing that you care. Things like the casting portal have allowed us to do that. Once dig through all the auditions that come in, we were able to send a really nice little, just a couple clicks of the mouse and send a really nice little link to them where they can read about the narrators and see what their stuff on Audible, hear the audition that was submitted. And I think that really makes them feel part of the process. They really appreciate it. Um, so yeah, just all that, the boom, and audiobooks. Yeah, now we're getting out there. So
It seems like Sean has been a big part of this because I really have noticed that these changes have been happening, in the last 1 to 2 years. It seems like that, I don't know, like you said, if your
yeah,
goal has been to get your name out there more, I feel like I have been seeing a lot more of the Dreamscape name.
yeah, absolutely. He is a huge part of it. Honestly, I think then from frankly, as terrible as COVID was, people bought a lot of audiobooks in the pandemic. So from that end, just kind of like a perfect storm. Yeah, Sean's very active. He's the president of APA too. He's a very nice guy. Yeah. So
Cool.
um
All
well
right. I would like to know, do you have any closing thoughts on anything? Is there anything just kind of wrapping up that you thought you might share today or that you wish you could have shared and it didn't come up?
one of the things that I working on today that I'm really excited about is this original kind of educational family friendly video we're doing for the first time. We've done these as I mentioned, the smaller iconographic stuff, but we have some just our the director of those, kind of the guy who produces all those, produced the Skull, which took home the Audie this year. We finally kind of got the green light to do something longer, not necessarily for small children. I'm really excited, called DS Explore. The first one's going to be Into the Cosmos. It's just all about kind of space. It's going to come out right in time for the eclipse. And it's very cool. We've never done anything like it before. We've done some smaller things similar, and we have a video distribution, just like the audio distribution business, which I don't think I had mentioned. That's basically the same deal. People have made a movie and now want to get it up on Tubi. How do I do that? And we were looking at those and we go, we could do something like this, kind of keeping in the spirit of the iconographic stuff, that it's educational. It's kind of something people could sit down with their kids and maybe spark conversations. Adults will learn something too. It can be on these platforms, and I'm really excited for it. I hope, I hope other people like what we're putting together, but I've seen some cuts and it's just like, I'm like, wow, I can't believe, that we've done this here.
That is
I
really
know it's not
neat.
audiobook related, but
Yeah, but it's a project that you're
yeah, it's
excited
pretty
about and that you're
exciting.
proud of. That's great. I would like to keep an eye out for that. Um, okay, one last question that I like to ask everybody. If you were going on the Great American Road Trip, what would be the song playing on the radio?
Song. Oh my gosh.
This is probably hard for you as a musician to pick just one.
I know, and most of my favorite songs, I'll say them if you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about. You know, I like acoustic music. I think if I had to pick one, and it's the Great American Road Trip, I'm gonna pick, there's a Nick Drake, Pink Moon. It's calm, it's peaceful, it's simple, and it's beautiful. And it'd be a
Oh,
great thing to zone out on and hear that going in the background while you're, staring out the window, um, at all the sights.
that sounds absolutely great. All right. It has been lovely to talk with you again and to actually get to chat about a wide variety of things this time. I've never gotten to talk to you for this long. So I really appreciate you taking the time to make this
Yeah.
happen, and it's great to have you on as our first producer guest.
Well, yeah, thanks for thinking of me and for having me on. It was fun.
All right. Well, thank you,
Yep.
Eric. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Yeah, you too.
All
Thanks
right.
again.
Bye. That was Eric Black, Director of Audiobook Production for Dreamscape. If you'd like to learn more about Dreamscape, you can visit their website at dreamscapepublishing.com. And if you're interested in working for their audiobook department, feel free to reach out to info@dreamscapeab, that's DREAMSCAPE, A as in audio, B as in book.com. The Nomad Narrator is created, hosted, and produced by me, Emily Pike Stewart, for Empyrean Productions, expanding the universe of storytelling. Many thanks to our guest today, Eric Black, for sharing his time and knowledge with us on our first ever producer's perspective. And as always, thank you also to our house band, Jake and Mr. Stewart, for the show's opening and closing music. If you liked what you heard today, please share this episode on social media or directly with a friend who you think might enjoy it. And if you're so inclined, you can always leave us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, or a review on Apple using your iTunes app. The Nomad Narrator will be hitting the road this summer. Stay tuned for travel plans by signing up for the mailing list on thenomadnarrator.com. As always, it's a pleasure to make this show for you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on down the road.